Courtney, you are back. Welcome. I'm so excited. So we were just talking offline a little bit, but I wanted to capture all the good stuff. So we are literally seeing each other for the first time in like a couple of years, I think.
Yeah, I think so.
So yeah, so I just wanted to like recap for everybody, like what status did you come to me in, and what was that journey like? I just kind of want everyone to like go down memory lane. Grab my tea here. Go down memory lane, and what do you remember from that time?
Oh, so I remember finding your podcast and starting to listen to it and going, this is interesting. You know, I could identify to some of the things, and I started following you on Instagram. And then I think I hit like a super low moment, and I was just like, I don't know what to do. You were helping me out here and there with like free advice. And you were like, you need to get into my courses or whatever you were doing at the time, because I know it's changed a little bit. And I was like, you know what? You're probably right. I should do this. I was just at a point where I didn't know what I wanted. I thought I knew what I wanted. Let's put it that way. I thought I knew what I wanted. I thought I was doing anything right when it came to dating, but I just kept striking out, or not even striking out, just having like really bad experiences. Like, you know, just like one of those, like, I was just going blindly in dating, and like, I had no self-esteem or any confidence or anything like that. And I just was like in a really bad place. And your podcast, I was like, made me think like, you know, maybe I should be working rather than working on like dating or whatever, is trying to find what I wanted in the process. So then I signed up with you and started doing the group coaching and then the one-on-ones, and, you know, listening to the courses, and here we are. That's the short part of it.
Yeah. So I remember, I feel like you were in like dating app hell, because I just want to capture like where some people really are right now. Like I remember us talking, and it was like going through that process of, you know, the dating apps and meeting people and then getting let down. So how did that, if you want to fast forward and tell everybody where you are now, and then we can kind of go back, but I'd love to just tell us what's going on now. So we'll spoiler alert.
So now I am, my boyfriend's literally in the process of moving in. We've been dating for over a year. It was very cliche of when you stop looking, you find them type of thing. We didn't meet on an app, and I don't think the apps are bad, because I have plenty of friends that go on apps. I think it really helped me get out there and date more, that I could find out what I wanted. And it was just one of those most random things. Like the minute I was like, you know what, I'm taking a break. I hadn't been on dating apps in like 2 months. I was like, I'm not doing this anymore. And then we randomly met through friends, and he's literally in the process of moving the rest of his stuff in today. So it's been,
I know you scared me. You were like, he's moving his stuff. And I was like, wait, is he moving? Is he moving out? What's happening?
Selling his house, and he has to close, and he's a procrastinator, so he waited till the last minute. So now he's like rushing to put everything in the house. So it's been a little
chaotic. All the procrastinators.
Yeah, in certain aspects of my life, I'm very procrastinating. So, but he's moving in, and everything's going really well. He met the kids like 6 months into the relationship, and I've been single for I'll be divorced for 6 years, single like 5, 4 before I met him. So it's been quite a whole nother slew of getting used to things. So it's like one thing, you go through the dating scene, and now you have to like master how to be in a relationship again.
Yes, which is a whole other thing, in the Level Up for Love, I have 4 girls that are in new relationships. And then I had this grand idea that everybody would be like, oh, I'm in this relationship, so now I'm good to go. And now we have a separate group for people in new relationships, because they're like, we have all those triggers, all those things that come up that I have a theory. I feel like you can only do so much work. And then when you fall in love, like really deeply in love, there's that kind of love is the only thing that can get deep into those crevices where you're like, oh, I guess I wouldn't have worked on this in therapy because I didn't know about this fear. It brings a lot out of you when you're going through, all of the things in a relationship, all the things, all the vulnerabilities. So what do you think is different? First of all, what's your guy's first name?
So his name is Michael.
Michael. Okay. So what was different about Michael? How did he stand out? You had gone through all this coaching, you've gone through therapy, you did all the things, and why did he stand out, or what was different in the beginning?
So it's funny you say it, because I remember distinctly us both going, like, me personally was like, Melissa always told me it wasn't going to be super difficult when I met the right person. It was going to be simple. There wasn't going to be it's work, but it's not like hard work. Like, we went through each week very slowly, and, just kind of like took it slow. We, went on fun dates, and we had a good time, and we really just focused on enjoying each other. And we both, like, every couple of weeks ago, well, I haven't seen any like serious red flags. Like, we both were really cut off guard, because he had been single for a while too. He has no children. He's been divorced. And we both were like, well, every time we had like a step up in a relationship, we're like, well, it's going really well. We both really like each other. So let's take it to the next level, and let's be like exclusive. And then it was, so on and so forth. And we, and I kept thinking, I tell everybody to this day, I was like, my coach, Melissa, she said these great words that said, it's not supposed to be that difficult. If it's that difficult, it's just not supposed to be like that. And I tell my friends now that are single, like, they go through all this trash, and I'm like, I've been there. And a lot of them have only seen me in this relationship because we've met through him. And so they don't remember what I was like for 4 years. They never were there. And I'm like, no, I'm telling you, like, whatever you're dealing with right now is not supposed to be like that. It's supposed to be simple with the person you're supposed to be with. You still have to work at your relationship, but it's a lot easier when you're in love with that person and they're the right person. And he also, like, I remember thinking, I'm not going to change myself to a certain extent. Obviously, everybody has to work on themselves in some capacity, but I'm not going to change my core values to be with somebody. And that, when I started leveling that up, is when I started meeting more like better quality men. And I remember meeting him, and he's just as goofy and very loud and just, likes to have fun, just like me. And I was like, this is the way it's supposed to be. Like, I don't ever have to change myself around him, like, ever. Like, it's 100% the way it's supposed to be. Like, I don't have to dumb myself down. I could be, into all my hobbies, and he loves it, and I love his hobbies, and like, we just match really well. And that's, it's like just waiting until you find that person. Like, I refused to ever like give up certain things about myself, and knowing that eventually, if it was supposed to happen, it was going to happen. And sure enough, the minute I stopped looking for it is when it happened. But
this is so annoying. You're like, dang it, that thing is true.
4 years of hearing people tell you that, and it's actually the truth, and you're like, crap.
Yes. But I think too, you did, like, when do you feel like when we started working together, and then, even afterwards, what do you feel like your biggest aha moments were? You said you started to say, I'm not going to lower my standards for anybody. Like, this is where, had it always been like that before?
A little bit, but I found myself before I met you, and even a little bit into it, like, kind of like giving up on some things, like, oh, maybe it's just me being, maybe you just have to compromise. And then eventually, or just letting things drag out longer than they need to be, knowing that somebody wasn't going to work out, like, and then it, shocker, never worked out. I mean, it got to the point where people were like, man, you just like dating one guy after another, and I'm like, well, like 3 months in, I realized he wasn't somebody I wanted to spend a lot more time with. Like, I wasn't going to go somewhere. I know what I'm looking for. He wasn't going to fit it. So yeah, I did end it. And everybody, I got a lot of crap for that, but I was like, I don't care. I'm not wasting my time with somebody, because there could be somebody else better out there. And I think I actually ended things with a guy a couple weeks before I like met Michael. It was fizzling out anyways. And had I been with a guy, I would have never went forward with Michael. So it was like one of those things, like, everything happened for a reason. And I tell friends of mine now, I'm like, you're stuck in this repeat situation with the same guy who doesn't treat you the way you deserve. You could be missing out on somebody that actually deserves you, because you're spending all this time trying to make something work that doesn't. And I think that was a huge thing for me, is when I started doing that and really like understanding, like, I'm not wasting my time anymore. Like, I want something serious. And I went through spouts where I didn't want anything serious, like took a break from the serious thing because I just wanted to have fun for a little bit, and that's okay too. But when I really was starting to like date again seriously, I think it was the beginning of, when did we meet? It's 2022. We started dating in 21. Yeah. So the beginning of 2021, when things kind of started opening up again and I was going out more, I started dating guys again, like in a more serious manner. And I started to see, I did have one guy that kind of flew under the radar and kind of got me for a little bit. And I still to this day, I'm like, what was I thinking? Like all the red flags were there and I just didn't want to see them. And that's honestly when it started changing for me. Because after that, I was like, no, I know what I want. And that, it was one of that moment where you're like, yeah, I'm not lowering my standards anymore. You can't treat me.
Sometimes too, when you date somebody that they do have all the red flags, but when you do it and you have the awareness, you're doing it with your eyes wide open. So you don't want to see them, but you really do. And then the awareness just overwhelms you and you're like, okay. But without that awareness, I think going through this process makes you aware. These are the patterns. These are the patterns that are not going to change. I know what I want. So it sounds like you figured out your pattern. You figured out what you wanted. You knew what your standards were. And then as soon as you figured out this guy isn't going to meet those standards, you ended it. What did people say to you when you ended those relationships?
I think they were just like, oh, another one bite. Yeah, like another one bites the dust. Like, it was mostly men who would say stuff, not so much girls because they understood. But, men would be like, oh, you're just so thirsty. You just keep dating all these guys. And I'm like, well, that's dating. Like, that's the whole idea. Like, I was very public about my situationships or my relationships or whatever, because I wanted other people to realize, that we're very similar. So, yeah, I did broadcast a lot more of like what I was going through. And people have opinions about everything. So I just didn't care. But, so I still get people today are like, oh man, we miss your dating stories. And I'm like, I don't. No way.
You know what? That's come up a couple of times. One, the guys that are making fun of or kind of like this, oh, well, you're just too picky. If you think about that, are some of those guys, so what we've discovered is some of those guys are guys that actually want to date you and they get irritated when they see your standards are higher than what they can meet. Mm-hmm. And so they start getting triggered. And that's when you start getting those comments. Like were these guys at work or just friends or?
Just friends. Yeah. So just random guys. Like I have a lot of guy friends. And honestly, I think most of them were very much wanting a relationship. They just don't know how to. And they were just deflecting onto, somebody else. I mean, that's what they do. So, I mean, I still get stuff like that today. I mean, I get guys are like, oh, you probably cheat on your boyfriend. I'm like, why? Because we're not up each other's butts all the time. I'm like, no, like we have a very good relationship. Like, thank you. Because we're not drama. We're not, there's no, a lot of these people that I know are very dramatic in their relationships. They're fighting all the time and they don't know how to have a life without that. They have to fight just to feel anything. And me and Michael are just very like, nope, this is, we like to have fun. We would rather do the opposite and just have a good time, I mean, every relationship has disagreements, but we're like, no, we're not like that. We're not dramatic by any means. And I'm like, normally he's just working, so he's not with me. So, and they, it's interesting to see how things change like after the fact with people, but.
So how was it adjusting to Mike in the beginning when he wasn't high drama? He wasn't intense. Did that take some time for you to adjust?
Yes, not a lot because it was what I wanted. And the last couple guys weren't like that either. I don't deal with drama, so I was very much not into drama. I had an ex-boyfriend who was very dramatic about everything. So when we broke up and I started dating again, I was like, I know what I don't want. That was the biggest thing. Like if you caused any drama in my life, you were out automatically. That was like my bare minimum. Like, I'm not dealing with this. I don't have time for this. I don't even do that with girlfriends. Girlfriends of mine, if they're dramatic, I'm like, we can't be friends anymore. It's just too exhausting. I got too much other stuff. So it wasn't that difficult. It was actually a breath of fresh air, and I took it as like, I took it all in and I still do, where I'm like, oh, I'm so glad I can come home and we don't argue about stupid stuff. And I have a lot to work on. So a lot of my things is, like I might get really irritated they didn't do the dishes or something stupid like that. And I try to stop myself and go, Courtney, 2 years ago, you would have given anything for somebody not to do dishes in your house. So I'm like, it's not a big deal. Like, pick your battles. That, it taught me a lot more after the fact too, of like how to deal with people in general, not even just dating, just how to deal with other humans, which was really helpful coming back to work and not having, working from home for 2 years and having to learn about that and all that kind of stuff.
So I was thinking about, since you have kids, what would you tell single moms? So we have a lot of single moms in our group and in our community. They're like, how do I date someone? So Michael doesn't have children. So how did you approach that? Because I heard you say you waited 6 months to introduce them to the kids. So how was that process for you? I'm just curious, because a lot of people they don't know when they should introduce kids. They're very mixed about it. They feel like, is it too early? Is it too late? How did you balance that?
That's a great question, because I realize it's different for everybody. In my personal opinion, I didn't want anybody to come around my kids unless they were going to be around for a while. I had a boyfriend that had met them before, but we dated a year and a half. So it was kind of like a standard. It didn't end well and the kids didn't like him. So I was very protective over like the last 5 years or so. But for me, it was, I would meet somebody and within 3 months, like I said before, one of my benchmarks were, can I see my kids liking them? And I was very open with my children, especially my son, because he's a teenager now, but through the process, he was almost a teenager. He knew what was going on. He's not dumb. Like, he would see names pop up and he'd be like, who is that? And I was just like, oh, I'm talking to this guy. Like, very open with him, because I didn't want to hide anything from him, so that when it came down to it, it would be a lot easier, to introduce. So with Michael, it was like, talking to him, he's a big Browns fan. I obviously am a big Browns fan. Like, we had a lot in common. The stuff he's a big child. Like, some of the stuff he would do, I would think to myself, like, how would the kids kind of like interact with that? I talked to them a lot about him in the beginning, the fun stuff we would do or whatnot. And then when it got closer to when I thought, because a lot of the parenting things you do when you go through a divorce is, they say, wait a year. And to me, I didn't want to wait a year. In my personal opinion, if they didn't like him, I didn't want to waste any more time for both of us. If we met and for some reason they didn't like him, I didn't want to have to, be like so madly in love with somebody for a year and have to break it off, because, then I got to protect myself too. So 6 months was a good point for us. And we did something very social. Like, we went to a Dave and Buster's, so a big arcade where there's a lot of people, lots of fun. They actually picked it. Like, I gave them a couple choices and they were like, yeah, let's go to Dave and Buster's. And it was a blast. Like, it was so much fun. And it was like the perfect type of situation. I didn't want to just take them to dinner, because kids don't really talk.
Yeah.
Dinner anyway.
Great idea. So how old were your kids when you introduced them? I know all the moms are going to want to.
Well, so my son is 13 now. So he was probably 12. Yeah. So he's probably about 12. And my daughter was probably about 10 or so. So 11, 12, 9, 10 area. So older. I know little kids get attached a lot easier. My daughter doesn't remember me and my ex being together because she was only like 5. I mean, she kind of remembers, but she doesn't remember us being in love. Like, that first kid, if they remember like their parents like together. So some kids don't remember. I just think, in my personal opinion, I didn't want to bring somebody around that was going to be gone soon, because that takes a toll on them. So it wasn't I would have a guy that I would be talking to, and they would call me up and be like, hey, can I come over tonight? Like, whatever. And I'm like, no, my kids are here. I have 50% off, so it's not a huge deal. And they get so mad. I'm like, I don't care. Like, my children are here. If I'm in mom mode, my dating life doesn't exist too. I mean, I'll text and stuff like that, but I won't meet guys out. I wouldn't do any of that kind of stuff. But that was just my own boundaries, because I wanted to put my kids first, and any guy that came across had to know that they were going to be like 3rd or 4th on the list. Mm-hmm. And if they weren't,
that's a great bar to set too, because it sounds like with some guys, I was just coaching someone the other day where they were saying, I told them I have my kids, and then he was like, oh, I guess I didn't really think about it. And he was never thinking about how the fact that she had kids, and it was just so annoying to her. And so obviously it's kind of an obvious question, but how did you feel that? Because I don't have kids, so I want to hear from you. Like, when you were drawing those boundaries, what were the red flags of, yep, this is a non-kid person?
I kind of did a lot of, I'm very rare. I can read people fairly well. So I would do a lot of my recon just in the beginning and before meeting them. I talked to a lot of guys that had kids. There wasn't too many that didn't. He's actually the first one that didn't have kids. And I was shocked that it actually worked as well, because I always pictured myself with somebody that had children, because I just thought they understand more, that kind of stuff. And shockingly, he was pretty understanding. So I don't know. It was just one of those things where you could tell like that. Like if a guy would have said that to me, that, said to your client, I would have been like, well, this isn't going to work out, and bye. But I probably would have done that in the beginning, like maybe like months into working with you, maybe when my self-confidence was a little higher, maybe I would have had more guts to that. Maybe in the beginning. I mean, I dated a guy one time that, they just always understood. So my situation is a little different, because it was always just a bar that I had set. But I also had a really my relationship after my divorce was the guy was nice. He wasn't bad or anything, but he was not, my kids didn't like him. So the bar was already set from him, that I was never going to ever drop that bar. I had let them meet him too soon anyways, because they already kind of knew of him, because he was a friend of he was like a brother of my best friend at the time. So after them not liking him, my bar was already set. So my situation is a little different. I didn't have to go through a situation where I was like, well, maybe no, it wasn't like that. So I almost had one other guy meet them, and I was in the shower getting ready, and I had this feeling in my gut that this wasn't a good idea. And I called him and I said, you can't come over and meet the kids tonight. And he was like, he got like really offended. And I was like, I'm not ready. Like, I felt it in my soul. And I think this is way before me and you were working together. It was towards the beginning of me like dating. And I was just like, nope, it's not time. Like, I just listened to myself. And I think it was actually Kara's book, reading her books that said, trust your gut. That bitch is never wrong.
Yep. Yep.
And I was like, nope, I ain't doing this. Like, and he got really mad, and I was like, you'll have to get over it. Like,
yes.
And sure enough, it didn't last. Yeah. So,
and when they get really offended like that, like, to me, a nice guy is like, okay, don't worry. If you're not ready right now, we don't need to put pressure on it. But the guy that gets really offended is the one that lacks maturity, lacks compassion. You can just tell they don't have what it takes. So what would you say to a single mom that's looking for love and is weighing out guys that have kids versus not having kids?
I would say, know what you want, is the biggest thing. What you want, what you envision your life to be like. Take it slow. Don't get upset if it doesn't happen as quick as it should, because it sometimes doesn't. Yes. Some people I know, found somebody right away. I'm like, good for you. That wasn't my case. But I was also, looking back, very emotionally unstable. So going through the motions of healing yourself is huge, especially for a single mom. We have a lot of trauma as a single mother. There's a reason we either got divorced or we're no longer with our baby daddy. And understanding that is probably step one to finding a really good relationship. That's my biggest thing. Like, I can see it in a lot of my single friends that have kids, and I'm like, you clearly have trauma responses right now, which I still have to this day, still have trauma responses that I have to check. So knowing that as a single parent is huge, because you don't want to bring in the wrong guy into your life, especially if you have children, and just understanding, because you don't also want to ruin a good thing either. And having trauma responses that you don't understand can ruin a good relationship. Trust me, I tried to do it many times with him, and he's still around. So
what do you think an example of one of those is?
So, for instance, in my eyes, my ex was very controlling. So even when I go out to have a drink with my girlfriends, if my now boyfriend says anything that I remotely think is a negative thing about me going out, I automatically get real anxious and very just nitpicky, and I'll get real defensive. And he often has to say, it's not what I meant. Like, that's not what I mean. I don't mean you can't go out with your girlfriends. Like, he'll just say, he's like, just don't want you to like say dry, like drink a couple drinks and then drive. Just call me. He's also needs, is learning how to communicate with me. So he doesn't know how to communicate with somebody who has somewhat of a trauma experience. So, my ex-husband, I thankfully am lucky one of, that didn't have an abusive, but it was controlling. So like, I'm very like, if I want to go have fun, I want to go have fun. And my boyfriend's all about that. However, he just doesn't know how to communicate, and I tend to get tensed up and it doesn't always end well. So.
Okay. So that's a great example. And an example of things that you still work through, even when you're in a healthy relationship, that those are the things that, if you can do as much therapy as you can. But I think like when you're faced with it and you're in a real relationship and having those coping mechanisms, having the tools. So what's in your toolbox? Do you feel like when you come up against things like that and you go through it, do you have a go-to of what you do? Is it therapy? Is it journaling? What are there things that you still go to kind of get you through the new challenges that your new relationship?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big component of lifting weights and going to the gym, going for a walk, something to just calm yourself, whatever works. I've tried journaling. I found like 2 journals and I was like, oh, I got 3 pages in. I never finished it. But it was interesting to look back because I come so far since those couple of journal entries. So finding something that works for you, cleaning your house or something. Normally I told him when we first started dating, if I ever get upset or defensive or have like a trauma response, because I'm very aware of it, just leave me alone for like 10 minutes. I was like, because that's what helped me. And I can just do my own thing for like 10 minutes and I'll come back and I'll be able to verbalize how I'm feeling, because I'm very much built kind of like sometimes like men where I can't verbalize how I'm feeling very well. So it's something I'm constantly working on. I don't know if I just shut down or what it is. So just finding some kind of outlet and just knowing the traumas is huge. Like if you can just know what sets you off is the biggest tool you can have, because a lot of people don't even realize it's a problem. Like I talked to plenty of people who are like, I'm like, I don't think you realize like the guy who cheated on you 2 years ago still is affecting you, or the narcissist that you dealt with is still having that power over you and you're letting it seep into other, like they almost seek it out because it's the only way they can feel anything. If you can get around that and just know that's an issue, that's like, you're already well ahead of most people, in my opinion.
So if you had to go back and look at, say, your top 3 to 5 milestones of where you were when you started your personal development journey, like you got to a point, maybe you share like when you got to the point where you're like, okay, I need coaching. And then what do you feel like those major milestones, revelations were as you got through those steps in the process?
So I remember once just being like, knowing that what I wanted was okay. Like what I wanted was okay. Like putting myself up top of the list was a big thing, because that was just knowing that there was a point where I thought I knew what I wanted and I didn't. And so that was a huge one, just knowing that like, oh, it's okay to edit what you want over time. Like you can change your mind. You could have dated Joe Smith 3 years ago and liked everything, but it just didn't work out. And then 3 years from then thinking, oh, I would never have done that again. Like, because you change and evolve. So that's big. Having the self-confidence to, understand. One person said to me, and I didn't know how to take it. It was a guy, and he was like, man, for you, like, you're the most self-confident person I know. And it was almost like he was trying to like be nice about it, but it's kind of slap in the face. Cause he's like, cause all my friends are like supermodels and looking, and stuff like that. And they're like, they have all these issues. And he goes, you have no problems because you're so self-confident. And I was like, okay. I'm like, whatever. So my self-confidence was a huge thing of just knowing like what I deserved was huge. And it's okay to deserve what you want. Let's see what other milestones. I think just realizing when you start really finding those things, like those gumball things ahead of time, is like super, like mind blowing when you start seeing it really early. Like I see it still to this day in guys that I know. I'm like, like, no, like no one, it's so bad. And I'm just like, no, that's not good. So just so when you're able to like put that into practice, that was a huge milestone because it really changed the game. And then I think when I started just leveling up after each guy, because each guy brought something, a lot of them, I don't have any regrets on any guy I ever dated because each of them brought me something. Some like one brought me closer to a girlfriend that's like my ride or die right now. Like if it wasn't for me dating him, I wouldn't be friends with her right now.
Yeah.
So that was, just understanding that you have to go through the process. Like every guy is, even as bad as they are, teaches you something. So those were all, I think every guy I dated had some kind of milestone with it, me learning how to communicate or whatever with them and learning something new or bringing me down a path that I didn't think I would ever come, get to is just huge.
Those are amazing. Knowing what you want is okay. I was just making notes. Knowing it's okay to deserve what you want. So it's okay to want it. It's okay to deserve what you want. Knowing the gumball signs, leveling up after each guy too. That's a huge thing. I remember going through that phase where it was like, oh, now I'm dating guys that aren't terrible. They're not the one, but this isn't that bad. And
Right.
They're ending peacefully and it's normal and there's no drama. And it was like, that is part of that leveling up. Some people find a guy right away, but others take, you meet a few. And I think in each of those experiences, you do learn something, you do take something, and that's what you need in that process. And so it's your journey, and your journey doesn't look like somebody else's journey. So that is amazing. And then, yeah, just like you said, you have to go through the process. So
and knowing when to walk away is huge. Like it's not serving me anymore to be in this relationship is big. Like I met a lot of great guys and I still am friends with a lot of them. And I'm like, and there's a couple I went back through and said, look, I'm really sorry, like that, because I was the one that when it ended, that was the basket case or very emotional because I had not healed from like maybe the last heartache I had or something. And there's a couple where I went back and I said, look, I'm really sorry. Like looking back, like I reacted to it like a child and, I've come a long way since then. And they were all very, understanding, or some I wanted to make a boyfriend so bad because I wanted a boyfriend so bad, but they weren't ready, and me understanding that now, like, I've gone to a couple of them, been like, hey, I wasn't ready, or I was ready and you weren't, and that's okay, like blah, blah, blah. And it hurts when you go through that because then you see them with somebody else like a year or so later and you're like, I have a lot of guys that have gotten married or in like really, and they were the ones that were like, I can't believe you're ending things, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I'm doing it for you. We are not good together. We do not match well. I'm not your person. And now they're with their people. And I want to like DM them and be like, look at you. I told you I wasn't the right one. So they're out there getting engaged and doing all these things. And I'm like, good for you.
And very big of you to talk to the exes or have a sense of closure, because that's really knowing what you want is so critical. I remember having clarity about this and being like, oh, this is so key. I had no idea how key this is, because now after a year into your relationship, you're probably seeing, wow, if I am not 100% compatible with someone, even when you're 100%, there's still things that are not going to be 100%. Like nobody's 100%, but you've got to have the key things. And if you're trying to force something, so what do you think of that now? As you look back, like, can you imagine now in your current relationship, having to try to force it with somebody else, knowing how good it can be?
No way. But I kind of knew that to the get-go where like, I didn't want to force it. If I had to force it, then I was just not going to do it, because I knew a long time ago that it's not supposed to be like that. Sometimes you just put it up with it longer because you just don't want to be alone. When you come to grips with, is it me not wanting to be alone or, whatever, like once you realize that you're just trying to be alone or you just don't want to be alone, your life will change. Because I think a lot of women just don't want to be alone. we were brought up to be like,
Mhm.
you have to be with somebody at all times, or your relationship, or you have to get married after so many years. If one more person asks me when I'm getting married, I'm gonna lose my mind.
Yeah.
I'm like, can he just move in? Like, it happens all the time. I'm like, why? No. I'm like, one thing at a time. I was like, we'll see if it happens. Like, it's just, everybody has these timelines because we were brought up that way, especially in our generation of being like, you get married, like, da, da, da. Now,
I think those people need to be called out. I always,
Yeah.
oh, you're the goalpost person. Do you know
Mhm.
you're that person? So then if we get married, it's then we're going to have another baby, and then it's another baby. Like those, there's actually a really good TikTok of a guy that's like, when are you going to meet somebody? When are you getting married? When are you going to have the baby? I mean, that they're like constantly, moving the goalpost for you. And so I'm sure we could do a whole another podcast on analyzing that person, but I think they just need to be called out, like,
Right.
hey.
I call them out all the time. I'm like, no, it's like, why does it have to be a thing? And then they get all like, oh, that's not what I meant. That's what I meant. I'm like, well, that's what you
Yeah.
sound like. Like,
Yes, they need to be made uncomfortable instead of
Yeah.
feeling like, oh God, I've got this hot potato now and I've got to figure out what to do with it. It's like, no, I'm throwing it back at you. Like this
Yeah.
isn't for you to put the pressure on me to decide when I make major life decisions. It doesn't matter. They're not living your life.
Right.
So the whole being alone thing, I think, is critical. So you did spend time alone, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so talk about that, because I think that could be the most important part of this discussion of why being alone was so important. And how long did you spend time alone?
Yeah. Like I even would force myself to sit at home, like on a kid-free night and not go out, just to force myself to be uncomfortable because I needed it, because I could tell I was filling a void with just like going out and like partying or dating, or or I would be on Bumble just to be on Bumble. I wasn't on Bumble for like dating purposes. I mean, I went through a stretch where I was definitely that girl that just wanted attention. And I knew that though, too, going through it. Like, I'm just doing this. Like, I don't want anything serious at this moment. I'm just want attention. I'm bored or whatever. And it's crazy because I see friends doing that now. And I'm like, oh, I'm like, I have a friend who he got out of a 20-year relationship. And I'm like, oh, you are in your like post-divorce, like, hoe stage or whatever. And he was like, that's the greatest way to put it. And I was like, why settle down if you don't want to?
Yeah.
I would think as long as and I go, however, my one rule is for you is to make sure the other person understands what is happening. I go, I'm not all about those guys that pull this stuff on women and then go, oh, I don't want a relationship. I go, you need to be upfront. I go, you can do whatever you want if you're upfront with them. And he was like, that you're absolutely right. And he's actually the most well-adjusted person that's gone through a divorce ever, because he didn't just go on online dating and go on dates just to go on dates. Like, he took his time to be alone, and he was like, I don't want to be with somebody for, just to be not alone. So he actually took the time, and I was like, and that's what I did before I met Michael. I was like, I need to be alone. I'm not dating. I'm not swiping. I'm not doing anything.
What do you think you learned about yourself doing that? Like, what happened in that period of time?
Just kind of like how to be at peace with things. I think it's just very important. Like, you just I don't know. It's hard. Like, you almost feel like more of an adult. I don't know how to explain it. You find yourself more like what you like, what you don't like too, when you're alone, because you're not just, you have to deal with your feelings. You have to deal with if you're hurting or not. I think that's the biggest thing too, is like, if you're by yourself, you are forced to think about the stuff that you've been going through. Maybe, you have to cry a little bit or something. Maybe you're still hurting from even though he was an idiot, the one who broke up with you 2 months ago, like, it still hurts to be dumped, it's never fun. So just taking that time to kind of go through that, I think is huge, because it helps you heal. And it's just good to spend quality time with yourself. I'd still do it to this day. Michael works until like 8:00 at night, and people are like, oh, come out. And if I don't have my kids, like on a Friday night, I'm like, no, I'm just going to stay in and just watch movies by myself. And I'm like, oh, this is so glorious.
Yes, I think people really misunderstand. And I think too, I've thought a lot about this even this week, about introverts versus extroverts. And I think it's much easier for an introvert to do this alone time, where the extroverts really struggle with it. But there is, when you do spend that time with yourself and you can see yourself as your own companion, and you do help yourself get through the hurts and the pains and all the things, like, you do spend time with yourself, but then, like, do you even have to think about what you want to watch on TV, what movies, like, yourself, what you like, what you want. And that is, so how is that now helping your relationship with Michael?
It just helps us be able to like, prioritize our relationship. So like we get asked out. We have a very robust social calendar for two people that are as old as we are. And it's exhausting sometimes. And it just allows us to put it in check of like, hey, we just need to stay home tonight. We, need to save money or just do stuff around the house or just hang out with each other. So it allows us to kind of reconnect and just, put it in perspective, because now we're not afraid to be alone. Before it was like, you want to go out and do stuff because you don't want to sit at home alone. But once you start doing that, you almost get addicted to it. And you're like, oh, it's so nice just to be home by yourselves with the dogs and just hang out, especially after a rough week or something. Or if we know we have something going on, like doing something on Sundays or whatever, we'll just stay home on a Friday night and just hang out.
Awesome. Okay. So what would you say to a girl who's considering coaching? She's considering the group. She's sitting there. She's either a single mom or she's just a single girl. She's hasn't been dating, or she's in online. People are either not dating at all, I feel like, or they're on 4 different apps and they're overwhelmed and they have good jobs. They're successful women. This is why I want to interview you. You had success in every single area, right? But this one area was like, why can't I just find somebody? And I have realized that is my ideal client, because she's got it so together and you're so organized. You're a great mom. You had everything on the schedule, the calendars. I remember you were like super rigid with all your calendars and everything was so perfect. But then this one area was off, and that being able to just straighten everything out, it's like, now it all flows. So what would you say to a girl who's like, I don't know, I'm thinking about it, but I'm on the fence?
So my big belief is if you're not good at something, you hire somebody for that, to help you with that weakness in any aspect of your life. You do it at work. If you're working and you work on a team and you guys are missing that one key person to help bring up the team and stuff you don't know how to do, you hire that person. So that I needed help in this area. So I, took the chance and, I actually made a lot of friends out of it too. Like, so it was like, it brought a lot more than just meeting, Michael or whatever. It just take the chance, because it's not going to hurt anything. It's only going to make things better. So you have nothing to lose. And if you're not good at something, you need help with it. It's just like getting a therapist or, coaching in a fitness area. You don't know how to lose weight. Well, then you hire somebody, a personal trainer or something. It's the same type of idea. People just are so scared to, they don't get to meet you personally. So they're afraid to like try it, and it honestly would be the best thing. They could only learn something from it, but you also have to be open to coaching. You have to be open to being told, not what to do. That's not what I want to say, but like, you have to be open to taking those steps. So you can't spend the money on a coach and then not do the things that they are telling you to help you with. Like, you have to do the work. It's not easy. It's just like anything else. You have to put the work in it if you want to see results. Yeah. And that was huge. Like, I took everything that we talked about and put it into practice every time I went on a date. And it just, and it might not look like it at first. You might go on a couple dates and be like, I don't see it. And then all of a sudden it'll just click and you'll be like, oh my gosh, they're totally looking for attention. And you didn't even realize it. Or, it's so funny because I talked to my cousin. She got out of a 5-year relationship the minute I started dating Michael. She got out of a relationship and she's like, we're never single at the same time, but she actually helped me a ton in the beginning of me being single before I even met you, of like, don't do this, that, and the other. And she took like a year off of dating altogether. And she's, been great at just like knowing like what to do and looking for attention or not looking for attention. And we talk about guys all the time and how they do certain things. And we're just like, why are they doing that? And I lost my train of thought, but I was going somewhere with that. But, we talk about it a lot of like how, the apps are and things like that. And she's real good. She only uses like one app, but she'll talk to a guy and she'll be like, she knows all the trauma responses and all that stuff too. And we talk about it on a regular basis about, how that stuff works. Yeah, exactly.
And once you see it, you can't unsee it. And then that's what I teach in all of these programs and coaching, is being able to identify those patterns, because once you see them, then you stop blaming yourself. You stop wondering, is this something I'm doing? Because that's what I used to scroll through the text and like, did I say something wrong, or where did it, all of a sudden his mood was shifting and I didn't understand what was going on. So yeah. What would you say was the scariest part about coaching, or was there anything scary, or did you feel like it was going to be scarier than it was?
I think it's scarier to be on a date a bad dude.
True.
Coaching. I mean, I was like, it can't hurt me. I mean, it's scary because you're most people, and this is in general, flat across the board, people spend money on stuff. They're expecting a tangible product in their hands, and they don't realize you're investing in yourself. And a lot of people, I mean, a lot of us have dating issues because we don't want to put ourselves first. Let's be honest. So doing coaching is putting yourself first. And understanding that you have to do that. Like, you have to fill your own cup up, and I told people when I was dating, like, I'm my first priority. It's me first, and then my children. And then you might be, fourth or fifth on that list, depending on how I'm feeling about my dog that week. So pissing me off. But that's the way it should be. I'm like, I'll never put you first, is what I used to tell guys. You'll be my partner or whatever, but I will always put myself first. I'm always going to make sure I'm filling my cup up. I'm, in my case, I'm doing my workouts. I'm making sure I'm into the gym. I'm eating healthy, that kind of stuff. Because if I'm exhausted and I'm not doing what I need to be doing, I can't be a good mom and I can't be a good girlfriend or anything like that. So it was really big for me to, like, I always told people, I am my number one priority. Like, if you're a guy that wants his girl to just be all over him all the time, I am not your girl. I was like, and that was the one thing I want to do. And I know people that would say, well, maybe you just text too much, or maybe you just don't do this or whatever. And I'm like, well, this is just who I am. Like, and it's really funny, is texting used to be a big thing for me. And then by the time I met Michael, I realized that stuff really didn't matter to me anymore. And he texts me way more than I ever text him. Like, I'm like sitting there half the day. I'm like, oh my God, like I can't even text him back fast enough. I'm like, wow, these guys really do exist. So they do exist. They do exist. There's guys out there that will text you if they want to, they would. Big believer.
Yes.
So
do you believe now that you know what you're looking for, not that you'd want to find somebody else, but do you look at it now as like, man, if I just would have known all this, it wouldn't have been so hard or so daunting, or so overwhelming? I
mean, yes, a little bit. However, like, with your coaching, I kind of realized that it was going to happen when it was supposed to happen. So that took a lot of pressure off. When you take that out of it and you're not trying to always just find a relationship to be in, it makes it a lot easier. And just going day by day. I mean, it's still stressful, but yeah, I mean, I still think, to this day, I had to go through all of that stuff on purpose. I had to go through the struggles, and I had to meet all the guys, some good, some bad, and just, it was part of the process, and every relationship or situationship I was in, I always took something out of some way, shape, or form, a learning experience, or the love of golf, something really stupid. I always tried to find one positive thing about something, and people thought I was crazy. And I was like, no, like, you have to, because it's the only way you'll stay sane throughout the process. It's just have fun with it. Yeah.
That's such a great mindset. I love that, because if we're just sitting there hoping that each guy is a husband, it's like, probably not, but what can you gain from this, or what's the positive takeaway? Or even if they just tell an inspiring story that you remember forever. I mean, you just never know what's going to happen on a date, or it could be a friend, or like you had, it led you to a girlfriend. I mean, you just never know. So it does, inspires people to get out there and start meeting people when they're ready. Soon as they've mastered their alone time.
I think the biggest thing is meeting people in general, just go out. Like, I actually have a friend, I have a group friend. It's like it's me, my boyfriend, and some friends. And we call ourselves the D5, like the divorce 5, because I literally will pick up, I call them like strays. Like, oh, this person is just recently single. They need like somebody to help them through it, because they're going to go through some shit in the next couple of years.
Yeah.
I literally will take them, and I'll like be like, oh, you need a friend, like blah, blah, blah. Like, it's like, I'm like a magnet for it now, because I'm like, they need help. Like, they're going to need help when they start dating or whatever. Now, I don't give unsolicited advice unless they ask for it, because I learned that the hard way. You just wait until they need you, and then you bring it up. But it's a big thing now. Like, I just tell them, just get out and meet people. Like, my cousin who got a relationship, she literally will come out just to meet, because I have a very big social group which I purposely did a few years ago. Like I made myself go meet people. And half these people that I've met, I would have never, ever met Michael if I wouldn't have just gone out and just started introducing myself to people.
Oh, so you went out and just did things like hobbies, interests, and what kinds of groups did you go see or what?
So like I was golfing with I go to a pool, like a public, well, it's a private pool you have to pay a membership for. A couple years ago, my friend got me into it. And then I met some guys who are really good friends of mine now. And then fast forward like a year or so later, we're golfing, and then we're golfing around some other people that looked like our age. So they were in front of us and they looked like fun. And there was one girl in the group. I'm like, oh my gosh, another girl that golfs. That doesn't happen very often. So we're all in the clubhouse and I start talking to her, and the guy she was golfing with, like as her partner, was there, and we're all talking. There's a big group of them. And then we asked my friend Jamie, who's like one of my best friends, to come out. She ends up meeting that guy that he was with, and now they're married.
Oh.
So had I not had I not been golfing that day, that would never happen. That whole group of friends is friends with my friend Vanessa, who is my boyfriend's best friend. So a year after that, had I not met all these people that day, and that turned into like a summer of like fun hanging out, fall fun hanging out with them. This big old group of people, I didn't realize they had so many friends. It was ridiculous. But had I never hung out with them, I would have never met Michael.
Mm-hmm.
So that one golf trip, like literally just set like it's the craziest story ever. I can pin everybody I've met through like almost that day.
That's amazing. And that was just you just saying, I'm going to get out, I'm going to do things. I'm not going to just sit on my couch and watch Netflix. Yeah. And I tell girls, you have to be, you can't just be going to work, going to the gym, coming home and watching Netflix. Yeah. It is extremely tempting for us introverts, right? Especially is I say that and it's painful to say it. You have to get out, but you do, you've got to, this expanding doing things you like doing, because I'm assuming you like playing golf. So it's something you really like to do. That's what makes it fun. You don't going to play golf because there's guys on the golf course. That's not, if you hate it.
And that does help. I mean, we did pick up golfing for that reason, but
if you end up liking it, then I think there's nothing wrong with that. Explore it. If you like it, great, then do it. So yeah, I mean, because that is where guys are, but I just feel like you want to be doing something, because you don't want to be like Ian and we call our dog the foamer. She's just constantly begging for everything. She's like always there in our business. Like, you don't want to be the foamer at the golf course, but if you're there and you're participating, you're meeting people, it happens organically, and that's great. So I found that there was a statistic. It was like 34% of people meet online, but there was like 27 is still meeting through friends. So it's still like almost just as viable as online dating. So people need to really remember that those two are almost tied for how you're going to meet people. So that's a great part of your story. Oh, I love it, Courtney. This is so fun. This is just such a joy, because I started thinking like, I was going to interview my most recent clients, but then I started thinking, I want people to see like what the results are years later and what the journeys look like, so that somebody can say, you know what, Courtney is a lot like me. I'm a mom. I have 2 kids. I'm divorced. Like that kind of dynamic, as so many women going through that, and they feel like nobody that doesn't have kids is going to understand. And so that's a cool thing that happened, where Michael was very accepting of your kids, and that worked out, and that's working out even. Well, you're just moving in. He's just moving in now. So
literally, they're moving stuff in. That's why if you see me look up and over, I'm like, what's going on?
They're moving around. So, well, I will let you get back to the move, but maybe this was a nice break for not having to carry anything. I have to. I can't carry anything right now. I'm doing this important. Exactly. Well, thank you so much for taking the time. I know there's so many girls that are on the fence. They're thinking about coaching. They're wanting to know what it's like. And so there's just nothing better than having the real conversation and hearing the real story. So thank you so much for taking the time and for being here and sharing your story, being vulnerable. And I'm so excited for you. I can't wait to hear all the new developments, and congrats on moving in together. It's a major milestone, and you're together 1 year right now.
It's a little over a year. I think August, it was a year.
Nice. Oh, congratulations. Yay.
Thank you. I know it's a big deal. It flew
Yes.
by. Holy crap, it was fast. After 6 months, it was just like smooth sailing.
Yeah. Oh, and it just like, I feel like it just gets more comfortable and you really just, I don't know. That's what I feel like. Even though I'm married now, it's a good still, I don't know. I just still feel like we're still relaxing into each other and it just gets more fun. And yeah, the adventure has just begun. So very, very cool. Thank you so much, Courtney. I'm so happy to have you here. Congrats and keep us posted on all the good things.
Always.
All right. Thanks, then.